How do you trade sterling this week?
Probably it's the same way that we've been trading sterling over the past few months, which is to try to avoid it if you can. But really, I suppose we're probably thinking now that you'd want to be buying dips rather than selling rallies. We have really been quite bearish on the UK political scene and sterling for most of this year, and that has tended to serve us well. But I think certainly there's been a real change over the past few weeks where it does seem that Boris Johnson is focused on getting a deal, putting all his focus on that rather than just getting out. And if you have a deal, great, but hard Brexit being a higher priority there. So I think at this point, it seems that getting a deal, whether it's soon or within a few months, seems to be the government's priority. So I think that's positive for the pound.
What is your base case now, Sean? I know it's tough. It's a tough question to ask these days, but is it more about a delay? Is it a crash? Can they get that deal by October 31st? And can you really put a no-deal Brexit outcome off the table now?
No, the no deal is still a possibility, particularly once you have the lapse of the Ben Act, as I understand it, that they would have to bring in a new deadline if we do get perhaps maybe a 3-month deadline. I think our base case roughly would be that we get an extension to the end of January, but that there is maybe a narrow approval of a deal. But don't forget there should be an election too. We do think that there will be an early election, and that to us that's another source of potential sterling concern, and that will be ultimately bearish sterling. So near term, I think supportive for sterling, but on sort of a six month and beyond basis, do still think that it'll come under pressure.
Sean, just switching focus to the Aussie dollar, we have had these more optimistic comments now from Liu He over the weekend in terms of trade and the truce. Is that fully priced into Aussie dollar at this point?
Well, I think a bearish view is still priced into the Aussie. If we look at spec positioning, at least we have fairly substantial short positions for real money and leverage funds. So in the futures market, at least, there's still quite a bearish view. So I don't think it's fully priced in. The Aussie's had a decent sort of a run. Arguably, it's underperformed though. So we might get a little bit more upside, perhaps a go at 69 cents if we can get further positive sounds from China and the US. But really, we'd like to see that deal, some sort of phase one deal, whatever you call it, at the APEC meeting in mid-November. So at this point, there is better news priced in, but certainly I don't think an all clear on the trade front. And as you were saying earlier, some of the hard numbers on trade are still looking dire.